Welcome to Holy Fractional, the podcast dedicated to elevating the role and success of fractional workers everywhere. I am your host, Andrew Graft. Holy Fractional, the future of work starts here, and it starts now. Welcome to the Holy Fractional podcast, everyone. I'm Andrew Graft here with my behind-the-scenes producer and bachelor short-timer, Todd Hines. Today on Holy Fractional, we welcome one of my new favorite people. He is a tech industry success story turned executive coach. He's been a lawyer, a founder, a COO, a CTO, a CEO, a consultant, a VC fundraiser, you name it. But today, he helps high-achieving executives and entrepreneurs unlock their potential and take control of their own happiness. I am, of course, talking about executive coach Casey Hildreth. Welcome to the show, Casey.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Pleasure is all ours.
I should correct you, by the way, for one thing. I'm not a lawyer. I was a paralegal. So I just want to, for clarity purposes.
Allow me to apologize. And I don't know if there's like a lawyer joke in there somewhere where it's like, you don't want to associate. I don't know.
But in some way, yes.
Okay. Well, in that case then, and the rest of it's all pretty like low level stuff. So I was leading with lawyer because I thought that was the biggie, not the CEO or the COO or any of that stuff.
Right.
For my listeners, I've said this before, my greatest inspiration by far for doing this show are the people that I've met throughout the course of my own journey as a fractional and as a solopreneur. And what I love about the people that I've met is how talented they are, how accomplished they are, but even more importantly, how human they are. And they come complete with their own fears, their own weaknesses, their own blind spots. And everyone I talk to, the one thing they've got in common is they're all just looking to become better versions of themselves. And that is why I am so happy to welcome you to the show today, Casey. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So before we start digging into the crux of today's subject, which is sort of an exploration of how we can unlock our potential, largely by getting out of our own way. Tell us a little, Casey, about your background, and just starting with like your early days growing up.
Oh gosh, yeah. So growing up, I grew up in a somewhat of a difficult household, very middle class. There was a divorce, remarriage, kind of a classic American story, and just struggled through life for a little bit there. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I think a lot of us have that, where I just kind of meandered and explored and had no idea what exactly I wanted to do with my life. I think I've tried every industry and every occupation known to man. So it was part of that process of just exploration. And I found myself kind of in my late 40s and 50s becoming an executive coach, which is something I never actually predicted I would do. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was a kid. And But yeah, it was a fairly good upbringing. I was taken care of and everything else, but it was a little bit of a struggle, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, didn't know who I was. And
tell us about Iowa.
Oh my gosh!
I remember you told me you're born in Rochester. I realize, but I was really fascinated by some of your experiences in Iowa. How did those experiences shape you, Casey?
Yeah, well, being suburban, coming from upstate New York, you might think that I just kind of, lived that suburban life. But my mom and dad actually both came from Iowa, and my mother grew up on a farm. And so she thought it would be a good idea to straighten me out a little bit when I was 13 years old, to send me to my uncle, who then promptly put me to work, baling hay, carrying, slopping pigs, doing things that I had never done before. But it was an amazing experience because it taught me a lot about the concept of hard work and to a little bit about suffering in work, because it was always hot, 90 degrees, getting hay rashes, and but it was a great experience. I actually think that for young men especially, it's a great thing to go work like that and see what you maybe don't want to do for the rest of your life.
Wait a sec. Now that that stuns me a little that you went there and didn't say, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. Pick up this shovel and shovel fertilizer.
Yes, exactly. I think I told you that story about shoveling manure and having it blowing back in my face and looking around and thinking, okay, so this is a level set. This is definitely not what I want to do with my life.
So yeah, I was a big fan of that story, and I have my own like similar kinds of stories where I grew up literally digging ditches and all of that, and I agree 100%. It really helps shape. It gives you some perspective that maybe if you haven't done that you don't get. And so you mentioned, like you said, you're reaching adulthood, didn't have a lot of idea what you wanted to do. You mentioned your dad was kind of like old school about like how he suggested you pursue a career and around money. Do you remember what you said there?
Oh yeah. His line was, "You're not supposed to like your job. That's what hobbies are for." And so this idea that you do, kind of do what you hate, which for me was awfully bracing as a kid. I thought, it can't be what life is about. But he worked at Kodak for 50 years, and this back in the days when you were a long timer, when you joined a company and you never left. And he used to tell me, like, find a hobby that you like so that you can bear down on work and deal with work, which I immediately as a teenager just said, oh, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. And thus I went on my kind of exploration of trying to figure out, what do I like? And one of the reasons, honestly, I was a paralegal was because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and found out right away that I'm not good at it. I'm not good at the details like that. It's something I just didn't want to do. So I left and started a company.
Well, and you had said that your dad was, I don't want to suggest he was somehow overly obsessed with money, but he was very much focused on, well, if you're going to make money, you either have to be an engineer or you have to be a lawyer. But instead of deciding to go the route of, least resistance, or at least you started that route, but then said, that ain't for me, I want to kind of do my own thing. At that time, like, what was the drive for you to want to do your own thing? Not everyone's cut out to do the entrepreneur thing. What drove you?
Gosh, that's a great question. I think what it was an intolerance of unhappiness. I saw a lot in my family, a lot of unhappiness, a lot of anger, of situations they were in. And I think there was part of me that just viscerally responded that I was not going to live this unhappy life, that I really, really wanted to do something that meant something to me, that was interesting, that I could get curious about, I could learn about. I also have an innate kind of desire to learn. And so I just started picking things that, and I think we do this a lot with the way we make decisions, is hypothesis and testing. I have a hypothesis. Do I want to be a lawyer? I go work for a law firm in New York. As a paralegal doing deals on Wall Street, and I realize, oh, heck no, that's not me. And so I leave and go start something else. I went down to D.C. and I started working on Capitol Hill and monitoring banking legislation, and politics really shocked me. And so I thought, well, that's not for me. And so it's a process of elimination, of just exploring and seeing what resonates, what feels good. And I think that's so important. I talk to my clients quite a bit about this, is the idea of feeling good. Like, if you don't feel good, you can't really do anything well. So I just navigated naturally to the things that felt good.
Well, and I'll tell you, in talking to you and kind of, you look at your resume / CV, and it's very impressive, the some of the successes that you've had. Like I said, over 30 years, you've been that founder, that CEO, a Fortune 50 consultant, even venture capitalist. Tell us about those years before you pivoted to becoming an executive coach. Clearly you could have kept on going down that path for as long as you wanted to. What was it that you learned about business and yourself during that time that sort of impelled you through the rest of your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. There was an inflection point. First of all, 9/11 was an inflection point for me because I lost a number of people that I knew in 9/11. And I was in New York at the time. And so there was a huge shock, kind of a tidal wave shock for me of like looking at, am I happy? Am I doing the things that I like to do? And I had actually been offered the role of CEO again in another company. And I thought, I'm going to have to make a decision here because to be frank, I was under so much stress at that point. I was having panic attacks. I was, just feeling terrible. And that whole, in the back of my head, as I'd said before, it's like, and do I feel good? Do I enjoy what I'm doing? And I realized there was something missing. I just wasn't happy. But in that exploration, I started asking myself, well, what about my job? And this is what I do with clients many times, is what about your job do you like? And start to explore a little bit. And I started finding out that I like working with people. And I liked the idea of root cause analysis, which is there's a root cause to everything. And if you trace any company or any business situation back to the root cause is people. It's always people. And I realized to do well in business and to do well as a leader and to do well in your job, you have to understand people first. And so in my own company, I started exploring. I was the COO at that point, and I started exploring, all right, let me work with my team. Let me see what happens. And it was miraculous. Every person in my team started getting better. The team's performance started getting better. I started working less. And I thought, gosh, there's some sort of secret here. And so when we sold the company, and I kind of was, had this open-ended situation. I was like, I had money. I could do anything I wanted to do. I wanted to try coaching, and I didn't even really know if I called it coaching. I just started saying I'm going to help people, and I put myself out there, and there we are.
Well, that's amazing, and for those of you out there who have experience or even don't have experience with panic attacks. Just know those can be life changing and life shaping.
Absolutely.
And so I have a lot of sympathy for that. And some of the times in my life, some of the big shifts I've had to make was when I realized it was too much, whatever that thing is. And I would imagine you probably, a lot of the people you talk to. Let's talk a little bit about who you help. But I would imagine a lot of the people you work with face similar inflection points.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say 90% of the people that contact me are facing something that they found untenable. Usually, and this is, it's almost cliche, but it's kind of in midlife. It's the 40s, 50s when we're doing things that are making us successful. But then all of a sudden we realize that things that are making us successful are also really stressing us out and really exhausting, and we're getting so wrapped up in this idea of success and pressure that it just doesn't feel good. And so a lot of people will reach out and say, you know what, I can't keep going like this. This is too much. If I put myself, especially leaders, especially people who have elevated to a leadership level where they're suddenly looking at the whole company and saying, as a CEO, this is all on me. Like, I have to do everything. I have to push everything. And when that happens, the amount of pressure people feel can be almost, spirit breaking. And so they'll start looking around and say, I've got to do it differently. And then they hire a coach.
Well, and it's crazy because, I would have to imagine that a lot of the people you work with are a lot like people in our audience, right? I mean, we're talking high achievers.
Yes.
We're talking highly motivated, incredibly high standards for others, but especially themselves, right? And you would think that people like that are already very well set up for success. Thank you very much, right? Why do you think it's these people who most need your help? To your point, I mean, I think you talked about it being stress, but would you say there's a connection between that high self-expectation and the need for someone to help them get out of their own way?
Yes. And so you ask yourself, how do people get to this place of high success? Excuse me. A lot of times it's because they've been pushing themselves and pressuring themselves to do better. And I know that was me. I always had to do more. I always had to learn more. I always had to be better. And so there's an internal pressure, internal tension. And that works when you're young and your body can handle it. You kind of, that's the only way you might know how to get to where you need to go. But then at some point, your body kind of speaks back at you and says, this ain't working. Like I'm starting to feel sick. I'm starting to feel like I can't go on, like I can't do anymore. The fear is building up of what if I can't? And, I talked to, a very high-level consultant at a high-level consultancy. I used to say that the highest performers are the ones who are hardest on themselves. and they're the most worried about their job, which is strange because you'd think the highest performer wouldn't be worried about their job, but they're always worried. And it's a state of being, that it becomes a state of being. And my message is, because I went through that, my message is, you don't have to do it that way. You don't have to do it. You can be highly successful and still be a peaceful, happy, relaxed person.
So how do you help people do that then? I mean, it's kind of fun. We've talked on other shows how, like when we did an episode about imposter syndrome, where you can tell yourself intellectually and logically something, but your body just doesn't respond to it. It almost like it ignores you. And the reason that's important is because what you're saying rings so true. I think it rings true to me. I think it rings true to the people in the audience. And if only it were that simple, it was just, well, now that I've explained to you that's how things work, we can now move on with the rest of their lives. Exactly. Just do it. So, but clearly that's not how it works. And oftentimes someone like yourself who has been there and had the perspective can come in and help people get unlocked because you have some insights born of real experience that you can share. What is kind of your methodology, if you will, to help people get unblocked? Do you do group sessions, or what is your approach?
Well, my approach is born really out of my background in psychology and kind of the application I did with myself. Is that, first of all, understanding that we didn't get to where we are with a light switch going off. There's a reason we are where we are. There's a reason we do things the way we do them. It comes from childhood. So my process is, in a way, it's therapeutic in some ways, because we have to start with, what are my habits of being? What are the things that I do to cope, the things I do to push myself, to make myself feel successful, to make myself feel loved? Like, what do I do? And to explore that a little bit and ask, am I willing to unwind those habits, those patterns that I have had probably since I was 6 years old, 5 years old? And so it's always to start there, to start with the beginning. Where did we start? And so I'll ask many times a client, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about how you came up, because that will point to a lot of the patterning that they have today. Now, you're right. It doesn't change overnight. You can't flip a switch. You're like a train on the tracks. The train is running. It's been running for years in the same direction. You can't take a 90-degree turn on a train. Like, you have to nudge it. And so a lot of the coaching process is I see people every 2 weeks. We talk on the phone every 2 weeks. And so it's like nudging the train. It's every 2 weeks we explore a little deeper, a little deeper, a little deeper, and then practice and then practice. And what my clients find is, after 6 months, after 8 months, they all of a sudden start saying, oh, I see what I'm doing and how it's not necessarily useful anymore. And after that, everything begins to shift, because the moment they become aware deeply of this physical pattern, and it is physical many times, this is a primal thing. Our fear is primal. Most people think fear is a thought. It's not that. Fear is a feeling. And that's so important to understand, because the moment you become okay with the feeling of fear and really get okay with it, it starts to move. It starts to shift. It starts to lighten. And so that's and it's an ongoing practice of breath work, meditation sometimes. Sometimes it's just doing little things differently each day. And it is look up a year later and look back and think, wow, I get this a lot. They look back and go, wow, I'm a different person.
It's so interesting. You talk about the train being on the tracks, right? And I have a feeling, if people out there anything like me, it's not just that it's on the tracks, but the tracks feel safe. This is what's gotten me here. But as they often say, what gets you here won't get you there, right? I mean, these patterns. I mean, my very success is rooted in that drive and desire to be something more than I thought I was when I started. And so I would imagine those can be very difficult habits to break.
Yes.
What are some of the things you might talk about with someone who comes in and they're like, I'm really struggling with, I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I don't feel like I'm good enough to do this. What would be a typical conversation you might have with someone like that?
Well, first of all, the conversation would start with making it okay, that everything's okay. There's nothing to fix. This is the challenge we get into as human beings. We identify something that is quote unquote wrong, and we look at it and we say, I need to fix that. And that means going against the pattern. And the moment we go against anything, the moment we're in resistance to something, it gets bigger. There's a quote, what we resist persists. So it's more acceptance, first of all, that I have these habits. They're not bad. They're actually functional in a certain way. And I can incorporate those. But there are other things that I want to learn to do differently. There are other things. And so taking the client through and helping them see what their patterns are, and that's key, is the awareness of it, is to see, oh, I do this. Not in a judgmental way, just in a, I wake up and the first thing I think is, gotta go. Like, just noticing that habit. Like, all right, so let's take a breath. Why don't we practice something different when you wake up? Instead of saying, gotta go, and your whole body tensing, take a breath and lay there for a second and just let yourself relax into the day. And there are little things that we begin to change. And so I start the conversation there of just understanding that our process as humans is one of learning. It's one of growth. It's one of acceptance that we are not where we want to be all the time. And
one of the things you said to me that really resonated, you said confidence is really just the okayness that we have with ourselves.
Yes.
I would imagine much of what you're talking about is helping people realize exactly that.
Yes. Is it when we let go, and this is the key term, letting go of this tension and pressure we put on ourselves, when we truly just be okay with exactly where we are, warts and all, and we accept that we're lovable exactly as we are, we don't have to change anything, then we relax. And the moment we relax, we appear confident. We appear because we give off an energy that's not tense. When we're tense and fearful, our energy is pardon the phrase, repulsive. Like we push things away because we're
repellent.
tense.
Absolutely.
It's repellent. Like people can sense it. They can feel it. But when we relax and we're okay and we are good with ourselves, look at any great public speaker. What they're doing is they're being themselves. That's all they're doing. They're speaking from the heart. They're speaking from something that matters to them. And so when they enter that space, suddenly, hundreds, thousands, if not millions of people suddenly wake up and say, oh, I want to listen to that person. Why is that? Because it's attractive. Because being yourself is attractive. And we have to accept that we are good. That we are good as we are.
And for people who are questioning, well, am I really good enough? I mean, that's great, Casey, for you to say, but I'm having these doubts. A couple things that you shared with me that they just keep echoing in my head after our conversation. You talked about how there is no real risk. It's all learning. First of all, you've got to let go of this idea that whatever your performance, whatever you've proven to yourself, the consequences of that are really more internal. Instead of doing that, you can reframe it as this is you getting better. This is not a bad thing. And I like
an
this.
adventure.
You also said nothing is rocket science, not even rocket science.
Yeah.
Everything is understandable. Is that a fair assessment? Am I remembering correctly from our conversation?
Yes. And doubt, the funny thing about doubt is just fear that's been mentalized. So it's the feeling of fear. Fear is just a sensation. It's it's you're going down the road and you see a policeman taking radar and you go, that's fear. It's just it's a flinch. It's a reaction. It's a primal, animal reaction. Doubt is the mental component of that. And so when doubt begins to think about fear, it starts to say, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. It's not going to be okay. It hasn't been okay. And so to get used to this idea, first of all, the feeling of fear, it's just a feeling. You can feel it. But also to understand that your mind is just doing crazy things with fear. And it's just it's telling a story of not okayness. If you can get to a place where you realize that there is no risk, that it's just learning and that you're okay. And even if you fail, you're okay. And even if someone says no to you, or even if someone gets mad at you, you're still okay. And this is a practice for most people, especially if you're a type A performer who's been used to trying to reach perfection. You spend all your time trying to avoid anything that says that I'm failing. Well, I've been an entrepreneur, and I've failed as many times as you can imagine, and you have to fail to learn. Like you have to. So it's a hypothesis of, do I like this? Let me go out and try it. Oh, I don't like it. Okay, so I won't do that. Like it's just learning, and there's something in me that relaxes when I say that.
Absolutely, and I can tell you, and I've written about this, and people who know me know this is true. The most important lesson I learned in my own life took place in my late 20s, almost 30 years old, where I began to realize that the source of my own unhappiness and angst and just corrosive stress was that I had decided that there was this ideal that I needed to be, and that every day I was failing to live up to it. And it's that fear of not being okay, of not being good enough. And I love that part of your approach. Part of it is to start with the person before moving on to the next step. You'd mentioned there's a two-step process. One is know thyself, which I love. And then is it a lot of, is it breathing exercises, or what's the application? Once you kind of get to the root, what do you do?
Excuse me. Well, first of all, you start to be okay with your human experience. Like this is, again, it's all about not fighting your own human experience in the beginning. So you become aware of patterns, you become aware of habits, you become aware of when your body clenches. Like one thing I talk to clients about is becoming physically aware. Like it is amazing to me how much all of us are not physically aware of ourselves. We're all up in our heads. And so we don't know when we're getting tense. We don't know when we're starting to react. So the first thing is just to become aware of am I afraid right now? Am I nervous? Gosh, if you're expecting to go through life not feeling fear occasionally, then I've got unfortunately, I got a bridge to sell you. You are going to feel fear. Life is about getting shocked sometimes. Life is about having startle. Life is about having things that you weren't expecting, you didn't like. The question is, can that be okay? Can I feel that? Can I let it pass? Can I become aware of my physical clenching and go, oh, okay, it's okay? Because you're gonna feel it. So most of us, what we do is our mind gets involved, and it just stokes the fear. It just keeps magnifying it with thought.
Absolutely.
And so these are practices. These are all practices, and it's breathing when you feel it. It's relaxing when you feel it. It's learning to do things like this.
Well, that is it's amazing because it on one hand it feels very simple, and on the other hand, it is the core, and it's
everything.
I believe it takes discipline. This is not something that comes easily. It actually comes with work. And I'm sure when people show up in your office, they're saying, I'm ready to do the work. Just help me know what to do. And those are incredibly helpful steps as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. And I would say one thing about that is the biggest component of this is the decision. And it's a conversation I have with every client before they become a client, is that you have to internally decide that you want to break, there's a great book called Break the Habit of Being Yourself. You have to break the habit. You have to decide, because it's hard, because it requires looking at things that you might take as sacred cows. Like, this is the way I've always done things. No matter how uncomfortable it is, I like the way I am versus the unknown. And we have to make a decision internally that I am willing to explore. I am willing to change consciously. Because if we don't make that decision, then we subconsciously just fight the whole thing. We fight the whole process. And I learned that early on as a coach, is that I'd look up to a client and say, look, I feel like I'm in a battle with you. Like you are so wedded at this point to your way of being that you've got every argument to tell me why you need to stress, why you need to be tense, why you need to work harder rather than smarter, like why you need to do these things. But the reality is you have to make that decision to say, I'm not going to do that anymore. And that's not easy.
No, it's not. And I don't know about everyone. I just know it took me hitting a particular space in my life, kind of that proverbial rock bottom, before I said, because I was one of those people. I was like,
yes,
I am aspiring to be that thing, and I'll do anything to be that thing. But the problem is when you are trying to be whatever that thing is on the horizon, you've only got your own tools. I mean, I believed somehow I could magically think my way out of any box, right?
Yes.
If I just think about it enough and I focus hard enough about it, I will overcome. But the reality is, that's why they're called blind spots. You can't see them. And it is, I have been blessed to have mentors and coaches like yourself in my life who had not just the insights, but they've done the reps. They know what that looks like. And it is the most comforting feeling in the world to know that someone understands what you're going through and is actually further down the path than you are. They're welcoming them down the path. You're not just showing them just to walk out into the fog and into the dark. You're actually out there saying, I just want to help you get here. There's a path. And so anyway, that's me on my soapbox. I think it's so valuable that people do this. I want to look briefly at some of these insights. Look at these insights through the lens of really the fractionals and the solopreneurs in our audience, right? I mean, I think any professional benefits from the things we've just talked about. But given that our audiences are people who are solopreneurs and they're facing some of these very similar challenges. They left the corporate world, whether it was by choice or through downsizing, and now they're looking to start a business all of their own, right? And most of us doing it for the first time ever. We don't know what we don't know. And oftentimes, what I hear, people jumping straight to the question of, okay, well then my only problem here is how do I land more business, right? And how do I make a living at this if I don't have enough clients? And given what's going on in the economy and with AI and all of these external factors that are increasing that level of tension in the people who are pursuing this, what are some of the insights you're able to draw to help some of these people get clear with where they're going?
Yeah. I do get clients like this as well. So first of all, understanding that it's hard coming out of a secure situation where you've been given a paycheck and where you have a role and you have a brand behind you and you have a company behind you and you have people around you. It's hard to go out on your own. I've done it and I get it. And it's going to bring up every trigger, every insecurity that you've got. So if you can just it's not abnormal to feel afraid. It's not to feel worried, to wonder, to feel like you're exposed, like you're out on your own. I mean, I remember the first time picking up the phone, and I'd been working for a consultancy and picking up the phone and calling someone on my own, and they didn't know who I was and they didn't return my phone call. And I thought, if I had worked for that previous company, they would have called me right back. But now nobody's calling me back. And so we have to get used to this idea that we're out there. And the suggestion I have for most people in that situation is to get okay with your own discomfort with this. Because here's where you're going to learn the most. You're going to learn about marketing. You're going to learn about sales. You're going to learn about being on your own. You're going to learn a sense of strength. You're going to learn all these things. But you have to be okay with feeling really, really uncomfortable with it. And if you can, and you can be vulnerable in that, then the way you approach people will change. You don't necessarily have to push for sales. This is the biggest mistake people make when they go on their own, is they're banging on doors and hire me, hire me, hire me. And that energy is coming from fear. The energy is coming from, I need to get business to prove something.
Yeah.
We have to change the mindset. You've got to be relaxed and come from a place of, I want to help people. I want to do good in the world. I want to come from a heart-based place. I want to come from a place of meaning. And then when you go out, you'll have a different effect on people.
Yeah, think about that. I mean, think about, this is how I do it. When I think about when I am the happiest, when I'm absolutely at my happiest, I'm having meaningful dialogue about things where people were trying to make progress together, right? It is a completely different mindset than going up to a friend and saying, you know what, I'm really good at marketing, or I'm really good at finance, right? You like me, right? I love the idea of grasping that mindset. You had mentioned in an earlier conversation, I don't know if you remember this, when I asked you kind of a similar question, you had said, I'm going to say something that's not super popular. You said, the issue is not the reality on the ground. I mean, it's not that these conditions are irrelevant. Sure, they're relevant, but you don't control that. The issue is not the external. Heck, the issue isn't even you and your skill set. The issue is your fear of going out and being that person and trying to be, whether it's be something you're not or be afraid to say what you are. But at the end of the day, it's if you're not comfortable with being who you are and being proud of what you are and being confident in what you have to offer someone, that's what's going to hold you back. Have I at least summarized this somewhat reasonably?
Yes, because if you think from the perspective of the client, one of my favorite sales trainers that I listened to when I was starting one of my companies, it's Brian Tracy, and he has a famous quote that he says, "Telling is not selling." and I like to add to that, telling is not selling, caring is selling. And in order to care, so what's the opposite of fear and doubt? The opposite of fear and doubt is love and trust, is love and faith. And when we're in that place of love, when we truly have a desire to help people, a desire to be of use in the world, to serve, when we truly feel that, then we don't show up trying to sell. We don't show up trying to tell people how great we are. We don't do that. We show up and we say, "Tell me about you. Tell me about what you're experiencing." And I learned this as a consultant that you can sense people's angst about their own situation. It's not about your angst. It's about their angst. They are afraid. They are looking for help. If you're a fractional CFO, they are looking for financial help. They're probably confused. They don't know what to do. They can't afford a full-time CFO. And so they're looking to you. So they're looking for your presence. They're looking for you to be solid, present. I used to say to a lot of my consulting clients, we'll figure it out. It's going to be okay. We'll figure it out. It's almost like holding their hand. It's going to be okay. We're going to figure it out. And I watch as their entire being would just relax. And are they going to hire me then? 80% likelihood, yes. But if they don't, I'm still okay with that. Like if I can even help them in that one meeting, just sitting there in a quote unquote sales call, just sitting there, can I help you right now in something that might make your life a little bit better?
This rings so true. And we've also talked a lot about how effective networking works. And what you're describing is the same kinds of rules and guidelines we talk about. You show up networking to say, "Hey, I'm here to prove how cool I am," or "I'm here to ask what kind of job you can refer me to." We say, show up with the servant's mentality. How can I help you? I have amassed a lifetime of skills that I've proven I can help people with. That is the core of relationship building and trust building. Not that I'm asking of you, but I'm willing to give before I ever even think about asking.
Yes.
I just think that is so wise. I hope people are able to really internalize that today.
And when you do that, by the way, when you enter that space of servanthood, you relax. It doesn't. You become less obsessed about yourself. That's the thing, is that when we're pushing ourselves, we're obsessed with ourselves. We're focusing inward, and we're tense. And when we focus externally in the idea of open-hearted help, you just naturally relax. I always can tell when someone's trying to push me on something, the first thing that I feel is they're insecure. That's the first thing in my mind, is they're just insecure. And I don't judge it, because we're all insecure in some ways. Mm-hmm. But it's like you don't want to use your insecurity as your go-to. You don't want to be using your insecurity as your sales tool. It'll just push people away.
And the crazy thing is, I think about when I'm out there talking to people and walking them through, maybe they have very little marketing experience, and I have this 25 years. Much of it isn't relevant to them because they're just starting on their journey, and I don't want to talk well past where they are. But by stepping into the role of servant support, your advice ends up being so much better anyway. That's the crazy thing. You unlock all of the best parts of that experience that you bring to the table. It it is magic. And I think one of the reasons why I even started doing this podcast is the magic of connecting with people in ways that are authentic, that are built in trust. And that's what, for me anyway, life is about. As we start to sort of wrap up our questions, well, I'll just start with a really generic, like what advice would you give to anyone listening if they find themselves struggling, whether it's with fear or a doubt or just feeling overwhelmed? Just high level, what would be your advice?
Get okay with your own discomfort. Get okay with it. Be okay with your own feelings of fear and your own feelings of doubt and the things that are going through. If you can let them be, they're natural human feelings. If you can let them be, they move on their own. And this takes a degree of self-presence, where the first question I ask many times in a client call is, where are you? How are you? Because I want them to check in. And if they're feeling uncomfortable, all right, let's take a few breaths and just feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That, because the moment you do that, you'll see that it's just a feeling. This is the crazy part. It's just feelings. Our mind doesn't like those feelings. And so our mind goes absolutely crazy trying to figure everything out and trying to make it work and trying to push it back. But you don't have to do that. You just feel them.
And everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's not rockets. There is no rocket science, including rocket science. Let it go. And to your point, let yourself be who you are. Know thyself. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, Casey. Honestly, I know in my heart, having read your website and all the people you help and all the things you do, we've really only scratched the surface. I know you help executives go through leadership training, right? And help people become tell people, where can they learn more about you and your work and the services that you provide, because I think that's very valuable for people to see.
Yeah. You can contact me at my website at caseyhildreth.com, and you can send me a note, and I'll set up a call with anyone. This is part of my service to the world, is that for a free call for anyone who wants to talk for the first hour. So it's kind of my way of giving, and it's unconditional. I'm not expecting anyone to hire me, to buy from me, anything. I have no pressure on that at all. So if you have a question, if you have something you'd like to talk about and explore, reach out.
Thank you so much, Casey. It has been a real pleasure and joy for me getting to know you and really learn from your perspective and your experience. So I can't say thank you enough.
Thank you as well, Andrew, for having me on. It's been wonderful. I'm glad to be here.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of another edition of Holy Fractional. I want to thank our guest, Casey Hildreth, for appearing on the show today. I also want to thank the world's best podcast partner and my partner in part-time, Todd Hines, for making this journey with me. And finally, big thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us today. Until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay fractional.